Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Recruiting Rundown. I'm Kendall Smith, joined alongside of Wes Mitchell. Wes, we've had a busy past week of recruiting, so how have you been holding up? Because I know that you've been just staying up to date with all of it, per usual.
Yeah, trying to, track it all. You got, I would say the big trend I've noticed just on Twitter is a lot of new offers going out. We won't go through all of them here. They can go check that out on GamecockCentral.com. But lots of 2024 offers starting to go out as well. The coaches are on the road for the spring evaluation period. This is the time when, they'll go check in with a high school coach. High school coach probably says, hey, man, I got a guy you haven't looked at yet. And a lot of times maybe you get a new name, or maybe it's a guy you had on a list from last year, but you're getting your first look at him in a while. You're trying to see what type of progress he's made. Has he gotten bigger? Has he gotten stronger? So that's why you're seeing sort of, if you follow on Twitter, this big stretch of new offers that are going out.
Well, listen, before we continue with the show, I do want to say that I'm sorry for the jingling that you probably hear in the background. My dog, Harry, is actually making an appearance right here.
So hey, Harry, welcome to the show.
He wants to come and join me today, so I apologize for any further collar jingling that you hear. But Wes, I think to start off the show, we need to talk about this past weekend in South Carolina getting their first public class of 2023 commitment, and that came from Zabari Sandy. He is a 3-star safety out of St. John's in Washington, D.C., although he is a Maryland native, so he's going to school in D.C. from Maryland. And I think this is huge for South Carolina because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the class. It might get the ball rolling in terms of who's going to commit next for this 2023 class. So just kind of talk about how big this is for South Carolina, a little bit more about Sandy, and then where you think the 2023 timeline will continue to go from here in terms of commitments.
Yeah, I think we talked about in one of the recent rundowns, it's kind of a situation where there was some quiet behind-the-scenes momentum starting to build, and now you're starting to see that happen publicly. So with the case of Sandy, everybody always wants to know, well, which welcome home, I guess correlates with him. And so this is when Beamer tweeted back in April during spring practice. He had tweeted a welcome home on a Tuesday, I think it was, and that was actually for Sandy, who then wanted to wait a little while before going public, but actually did it on Mother's Day, which ended up, I'm sure, being an awesome present for his mother. And so, yeah, you're starting to see the guys go public. There's still 2 silent welcome homes that are out there. I would expect at least one of those to possibly go out fairly soon. I don't think the wait there is going to be much longer. Still not sure on that other one what the timetable might be. But Sandy is, I think, a good kid to get things started for South Carolina. Really good communicator, for one. I've talked to him a couple of times on the phone. Appears to be a great kid. Is very excited to be at South Carolina. And the reason I bring that up is I think he's the guy that's going to try to recruit others to join him in Columbia. And, Kendall, I think it's always good for South Carolina to get into what a lot of people call that DMV area, that D.C., Maryland, Virginia. Technically that's sort of just that little area right around D.C., but I'll expand it out. I think those 3 states/areas for South Carolina, we're seeing them continue to try to push into Maryland, try to push into Virginia, try to push into D.C., and then expanding up through the Northeast. Obviously, they've recruited guys in Pennsylvania, Ryan Brubaker, getting him last class. We're seeing Beamer and staff try to expand their brand beyond just South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, sort of those traditional recruiting areas. So I think when you have some success doing that, other guys, other kids in the area start to take notice as well. And as I said, I think Sandy's the type kid who probably has some relationships up there that will help the Gamecocks maybe get in on some future prospects as well.
And a lot of 2023 players starting to narrow down the schools that they'll be choosing from. So South Carolina being mentioned in the top 5 of several players over the past couple of weeks. One of those players being Kelby Collins. He just announced that South Carolina is in his top 5. He's a defensive lineman. So Wes, talk a little bit about him and when you think we might see a narrowed down decision on this commitment for him.
Yeah, I think most people probably looked at this name, and it's a little bit of a new name for South Carolina fans. He did visit South Carolina actually on Easter. That was the day after the spring game. So they got him on campus. That went well enough for him to for South Carolina to land in his top 5, I should say. Listen to the other 4, though, Kendall. Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Florida. So the competition is fierce. I think
That's what Shane Beamer likes, though. He likes the competition, so he's getting it.
It's one of those things you have to have a place at the table, right? You have to have a spot in the conversation if you're ever going to win some of these battles. So, it's an Alabama kid. On 3, the little recruiting prediction machine goes heavy Alabama. Most of the time, if Alabama wants a Bama kid, they're going to get him. But I think if you're South Carolina, you want to get in these battles, see what happens. And sometimes, as we know, schools offer way more kids than they can actually take. So sometimes when you get in these sort of high-level battles, maybe a school fills up at a position and a guy all of a sudden, you have a better chance of landing them. So I think it's always good to be in these conversations. We'll see if Collins sets an official visit to South Carolina. I would imagine with them landing in the top 5, unless he makes a really quick commitment here soon, which I don't anticipate, that South Carolina would get an official visit. And then, you go from there. You just hope the guy falls in love with the place when he's here for 48 hours, and then you go from there.
Talk about falling in love with a place, and South Carolina has a lot of official visits coming up in the month of June. It's going to be absolutely massive for them, especially over a couple of specific weekends. So what do you think South Carolina needs to do on these official visits to put their best foot forward, to really make, an impact on these players that are coming to visit them, and to ultimately get some recruits committing during the next month to 2 months?
Yeah, I'll sort of play off of what I believe has been Beamer's biggest mantra since he arrived at South Carolina, and that would be welcome home. It's probably a little bit of a cliche. I know every school is going to try to create that home feel when guys come on campus, but I think that's what South Carolina's program under Beamer has sort of been built completely around, Kendall. It's all about trying to make these guys feel comfortable, make them feel like they've basically got a second family, a second, a group of brothers now that they're going to be able to connect with and sort of take that next step in their growth, both on and off the field. So I think it's very strategic that even though you can take official visits in all of June, they've sort of tried to whittle it down to these 2 weekends because I think they want to have these guys on campus at the same time. They want for them to build bonds, not just with the coaches, not just with South Carolina's current players, but maybe other players who are also considering South Carolina. So right now, you can circle June 10 that weekend. You can circle June 24th. Those are the 2 big weekends right now that South Carolina is going to host official visitors this summer. And, I would imagine the way it plays out, you'll probably have a few guys trickle in the other weekends as well. And generally, that's sort of a situation where you're like, all right, we'd love to have them June 10 or June 24th, but you'd rather have them at any point than not have them on campus, So I think they're kind of trying to funnel them to those weekends, but you take them any way you can get them. If a big-time kid wants to visit your campus officially, you do what you can to make it happen, and it will certainly be a busy June for South Carolina. And as far as those timetables go, Kendall, a lot of guys these days, they don't commit on the visit. It seems like they go home, maybe the welcome home goes out, they get somebody to make an edit, and then the actual commitment goes out a few weeks later once they set a date. So even if South Carolina doesn't get a bunch of public commits on June 10th, that doesn't mean panic, because you're usually going to get some residual impact publicly from all the work you're doing privately on these big official visit weekends.
Well, as we've said over the last couple of shows, and as I think we will continue to say over the next few shows, it is definitely going to be a busy month or so in the world of recruiting for South Carolina. And as you can see all over Twitter, the assistant coaches are all over the place, just visiting different cities, different states, left and right. So we will keep you updated over on GamecockCentral.com. Follow all of our social medias as well to just stay up to date with everything that you need to know. And then subscribe to GamecockCentral.com if you haven't already. But Wes, thank you for all the updates as usual. You do a great job. And I think everybody appreciates kind of getting a streamlined, shorter version of what is going on in the world of recruiting, and we'll continue to bring it to you all as things develop. So Wes, hang in there, keep up the great work, and we'll do another one of these soon.
All right. Thank you, Kendall.